We're joined now by Angelo Fick, Director of Research at Auwal Socio-economic Research Institute. A very good evening to you, Angelo. Thank you so much for speaking to us. The ANC President had lots to talk about. Perhaps let's just pick up with that issue of local government elections. He spoke about the electoral mandate that faces the ANC, including its alliance partners. He spoke about central to the task of what they need to do now is rebuilding the economy, reduction of poverty and job creation. But crime and corruption, he mentions, has eroded the state's capacity. How are they going to respond to this if they are still fighting internally, even though he's calling for unity?
Well, that's the question, and we must not forget that this was a party political broadcast, and therefore it wasn't an address to the country, it was an address to the ANC. And as always, or as often with these ANC speeches, you listen to them and you think, if only that were the country that one lived in. But actually what is being described in these speeches, these words, these descriptions, don't really match with what the deployed cadres do in government, whether it's at local level, provincial level, or national level. And so these are not new sentiments, these are not new ideas. The problem for the ANC has been for the last decade and will be for the foreseeable future, implementing these words as actions in order to, convince the electorate that they ought to be trusted with their hands on the levers of government, despite the last decade and a half.
So there is also the public relations nightmare that they face. I mean, just looking at the reaction from various people on the IEC in relation to the ANC and what it wanted from the process, will people have belief enough in them to respond to this call?
Well, that's a test that I think can only be passed or failed at the ballot box. And so the 2016 local government elections come to mind, and, one imagines that members of the ANC don't want to have a repeat of those results in the cities. But the distrust in institutions, and particularly the distrust in political parties, has been growing in South Africa. And so the African National Congress is not the only political organization that has to re-win the trust or try and re-win the trust of ordinary people. Its alliance partners are in the same boat, the SACP and particularly COSATU, with the change of the economy under the ANC's policy mandate of the last 27 years. Trade union membership has really gone down. And so people's ability to trust those people who are in trades unions find real difficulties with them. One thinks of SADTU, one thinks of COSATU's affiliates in various forms. And the splintering of trade union movements into a variety of other options. And the precarity of work and employment means that many people don't qualify for trade union membership because they work in these zero-hour contracts, as they're known internationally, or labour brokering contracts in their new formations. And so it is a very different kind of South Africa that the ANC wants to rally behind it from the one that it rallied behind itself in 1994. And some of those conditions are its own creations over the last 27 years.
And the reason I mentioned that, Angelo, brand ANC, is the president of the ANC mentioning the release on parole of former President Jacob Zuma, wishing him well. But many people say this may be an ANC maneuver in order to garner votes at local level in KwaZulu-Natal. And when we're talking about how it's going to win votes, the president spoke about the district development model, saying it must serve as a catalyst for all levels of government to ensure access to basic services, which we know this is what those who are fighting over tenders is about, especially those who are fighting with the ANC of the lack of delivery.
So the district level is an important level precisely because there's been a spectacular failure at provincial level. In matters of education, health provision, who can forget the Life is Many tragedy, the textbook scandal of Limpopo, and the PPE scandals in the provincial health departments. And beyond that, at the national level, people experience the coalface of corruption, maladministration, and lack of delivery at the local level. And so it is precisely at the district level that there has to be a greater empowerment, but it is also at the district level that you have the corruption happening and that you have the least, shall we say, prominent cadres deployed. And that's where so much goes wrong. The people of the Eastern Cape can attest to this. where local councillors and district councillors, the PR councillors, often are subject to party diktats that don't really serve the region, but serve people sitting elsewhere. And this has particularly been the case around mining issues. And so this vision that Cyril Ramaphosa as president of the ANC paints coming out of the NEC is a very nice to have vision, but it's not a vision that is practicable unless the party and the country as a whole addresses what Njabulu Ndebele once called the conditions of corruptibility that exist on the ground. Because until those conditions are changed, and given that the ANC is sticking to its cadet deployment policy, given the president's remarks at the Zondo Commission, we're not likely to see much of a change after this election if those things remain in place.
Thank you so much for speaking to us, Angelo. Unfortunately, there was lots to talk about, but we have run out of time. Angelo Fick, Director of Research at the Auwal Socio-economic Research Institute.